Welcome to AI Factory Insider Episode 2. I'm Kaushik Shirhatti. In the last episode, we laid the foundation of the series. We talked about our enterprise reference architectures, mostly focused on hardwares, and we really defined what an enterprise AI factory is. In the next 30 minutes, we're going to handle two important topics. We're going to go a layer up and we'll talk about software and our enterprise validated design. And we are going to look and tell you a story about NVIDIA and how we used these enterprise reference architectures and our enterprise validated designs to build our own AI factory. With me today are Nic Borensztein, Distinguished Solutions Architect in our AI factory team, and Jon Fernandez, Director of Compute at NVIDIA. Welcome, Nic and Jon.
Thank you.
So, Nic, what is an enterprise validated design? And why are enterprise reference architectures just not enough to build an AI factory?
Yeah, so maybe one way to think about it would be as a 5-layer cake. This is an analogy that Jensen has used, but it goes from energy, chips, and infrastructure up to models and applications. And the enterprise reference architecture kind of covers those bottom 3 layers, while the validated design covers everything above. So one establishes how is your infrastructure going to come together, all the networking and compute dependencies. And then that establishes a reliable Kubernetes layer where you can schedule all the workloads that run above that. Now, the important thing above that is all of the agents, all of the inference, the actual models, all of the different observability and knowledge retrieval and other dependencies. Those have to run and scale on Kubernetes. So how are you going to bring together all the different components that need to live there? That's the validated design.
Got it. And when you talk about this validated design, is it just like a couple of software products from NVIDIA? Is it NVIDIA and its partners? What are some of the key components of these validated designs?
Yeah, I mean, one way it's kind of like having your iPhone and your App Store, right? In the App Store, we group it by different types, different functionality of the actual pieces of software that you're going to want to install on your AI factory. So one way to think about it would be through the lens of like the life cycle of a data flywheel. So, you start with what eval set, what training data do you want to build an agent to accomplish? And from there, you do data curation. Maybe you train and tune a model harness and the agent skills that it depends on. Finally, you deploy your agent, and you need to be able to do monitoring and observability in production. In addition to that, you need to be able to capture actual agent traces, actual payloads from production to bring them back into the development process of the next cycle of the agent. So you can kind of see each of those functions as a bucket of many partners that we have that kind of potentially serve that domain of functionality. Beyond that, there's dependencies on security. We like to say we're the only AI company that works with every AI company. So what we've really done is gone through the whole ecosystem, everyone we have relationships with, and pick the ones that we know are going to run really cleanly on the AI factory, that we know how they integrate together.
Got it. So is this what we called as ISVs, like independent software vendors who are, essentially solving this problem? And in the last episode on the hardware side, we discussed how we all make it work together by testing, validation, simulation. Does that happen on the software side? It seems like there are 6, 7 different buckets that you mentioned. So how do all of these different companies come together with NVIDIA to make it work?
Yeah, that's right. So at the component level, we install the platforms, we test it out, we make sure that the GPU integrations are going well, compatibility with all the different enterprise flavors of Kubernetes are going to work. So every individual unit that's that's present in that validated design is going to work. But then to get all the many integration points that you need for that full stack of 7 or whatever components, that's where the validated design will give you like an opinionated full stack of like, here's some options that you definitely know go together.
Got it. And Jon, anything you wanted to add? I know security is close to your heart. Like, how should enterprises think about security when it comes to deploying AI?
Yeah, I think you look at AI today and compare where it was a year ago or 2 years ago, and you start to realize these agents are becoming more and more capable. And so security is becoming even more and more important to make sure that these agents are operating in an environment in which is protecting the company and then protecting the user and the product in which you're working on as well.
Got it. Both of you guys, talked about agents, but I just wanted to make sure that agentic AI, while it's obviously the talk of the town right now, we're not just talking about agentic AI as a use case, right? This applies across all different use cases, across all different industries, right? So any perspective on that?
Yeah, there's definitely going to be workloads that go beyond just token generation, which is kind of the primary workload of the AI agent. You might be doing GPU accelerated data processing. You might be doing things like drug discovery, modeling protein folding and bonding sites. You might have financial use cases, or even like physical AI, things that you need to do modeling and simulation in real time of factory operations or different environments. So all of those are fair game on the AI Factory, which is a very versatile solution for all those different solutions.
Yeah, internally for enterprises and within IT, of which I'm a part of, a lot of what we do is around ticket deflection, for example, or empowering users, employees to self-service their own problems. So instead of having to reach out to IT to do things, we now have products and services built on the AI Factory to help solve problems. And it's a great use case that we continue to grow every day.
What's great about this ticket deflection use case is how you can actually measure the impact, the ROI, in terms of the engineering hours that are saved of all the customer support engineers that don't necessarily need to close tickets because the AI handled it first. So when the opportunity strikes, not every use case has such a clean statement of ROI, but isn't it great when it does work out that way?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the holy grail here, right?
Right.
Which is, I know a lot of our listeners and a lot of enterprises today struggle with, how do you tie AI investments and AI projects to concrete ROI? And I always tell all the partners and all of our customers that we work with, which is, start with the end goal in mind, figure out the important use cases, and then figure out how to try the business value and ROI to that. To that point, Nic, you have an interesting role. You've obviously worked on all of these enterprise validated designs, but you're talking to a lot of customers across different industries. What have you seen with these validated designs and reference architectures? What have you seen work? What have you seen not work with different enterprises?
Yeah, I think, at this point, we've launched the Enterprise AI Factory about a year ago, and we've seen a lot of different motivations for why our enterprise partners are taking this journey to kind of follow in those footsteps and bring their AI compute on-prem. In some cases, it's about regulatory compliance. They might be in an industry, healthcare, financial data. There's a lot of different places where data mobility itself is a challenge. And having it on-prem means you can put a perimeter around the movement of data, exactly where it's going. You can gain compliance really easily with certain things that way. That would be hard to do maybe with SaaS or cloud services. And then one of the other reasons increasingly is simply tokenomics. As people are moving their AI projects from being POCs, that they're just trying to understand the utility, to now they found the utility, they're scaling it up, and now they're getting a look at the token budgets. And that can really change people's viewpoint on what they want to consume as SaaS, what they want to consume within their cloud account, and what would they rather have a full stack on-prem to own and operate.
Got it. Yeah, and tokenomics obviously becomes a very, very important key factor into considering building your AI factory. Jon, can you give an example of how these AI factories are actually being used by an enterprise? Anything that comes to mind?
Yeah. So for us, we had a use case that came about a year ago when we started realizing, you mentioned security earlier, we needed an environment where we can have agents running securely and in a protected environment. At the same time, my team was offering a service that provided desktop compute at scale hosted in the cloud, sort of like a secondary system. A lot of developers need secondary systems to do their work. And it quickly became apparent that, hey, if we architect this correctly, then we can create these desktops in a secure environment where you can run these agents. And ultimately what happened is we now have a full-fledged service that has just taken off like a rocket within NVIDIA. It is It does two things really well. It runs 24/7 because it's a virtual type of a desktop. It's not a laptop that you shut down and then the work stops. And then secondly, it allows agents to run autonomously, which is the real superpower of agents, just being able to do what they need to do when you give them the task. And so it was a killer app that we were looking for. And then since then, we now have thousands of employees using it every single day. It has unlocked tremendous amount of use cases that continue to grow our own AI factory based on what they need. And all in all, it's just been a really cool relationship to see these different departments and teams utilizing something like this to develop their agent workflows.
That hits a pattern that I've noticed, which is, what did you size this for originally, expecting maybe 1,000 virtual workstation users, and then people suddenly made this connection that it works with autonomous agents, and suddenly how are we going to fulfill 25,000 requests, right?
Exactly.
So you use the hybrid on-prem and cloud infrastructure to do that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. The scale, we grew almost 15x within the first 3 months, and we were not planning for that. But the beauty of having a lot of the infrastructure hosted in the cloud to begin with, we can just scale out and roll out this secure environment as quickly as we could. And so it's been really well received, and it's been very resilient as a service as well.
I think that's what we see with customers. It's like the adoption curve at first is slow because people haven't necessarily discovered the solution yet, and maybe it's not feature complete and deployed in a place where it's convenient to the users. And as soon as you reach that point of like, I've put it directly into the place where the work is already getting done, people start to talk about it. They tell their friends about it. It's like, I'm going to do the work the new way. I'm not going to go back to the old way. And suddenly the adoption spikes to everyone you could reasonably imagine using it, until it's kind of completely saturated that audience. So you get this like S-curve.
It was that realization where maybe historically you would have to hit the enter button all the time, right? And so like you're working with AI, you're working in some agent is, are you sure you want to do this? Yes or no? Yes. And you get that fatigue, but it also just stops your work. And so to be able to do that autonomously but safely at the same time was really the breakthrough. And now you can kick off these tasks. Worst case, it doesn't work out, but you're not destroying other adjacent property at the same time. So it's really unlocks people's ability to do agentic workloads, do a lot of testing, development. And Nick and I were talking earlier, it's kind of, with so many people becoming their own developer, like everybody can be a developer, this has really created a cool space to try it out and to see what works and what doesn't, and to maybe take some intelligent risks, knowing that you have a safe place to do that.
Well, that's awesome. There's so much to unpack what both of you just said. Let me start with, you mentioned our own AI factory. Let me just start there. So we built our own AI factory based on our enterprise validated designs, our ERAs. How did it all start? And how long have we been running this AI factory?
Yeah, I mean, I remember Jensen announcing this enterprise AI factory product a year ago. I think it was at Computex. And he came back internally and said, you know what, I'm an enterprise. I want to buy one of those. We're going to build the first one. We're going to do it through all of our partners. We're going to sort of blaze this trail of how all the components come together so that we leave footsteps that our enterprise customers can follow and kind of have a very, low integration risk, kind of easy way to make all the pieces come together. Now, every enterprise has different use cases, have different needs, has different compliance policies. So they're not necessarily going to make the exact same choices that we did, but we can explain every choice that we made along the way and make it super easy for other enterprises to adapt to their own use case.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I that's one of the things I love a lot about NVIDIA in general, is that the challenge comes to, let's figure it out internally. Let's prove the concept for ourselves. And if and when we do, and we're using it internally in production, then we can in turn teach our customers how we did it, what's working for us, but give them the variability, the optionality to change things to fit their own use cases as well. And it's been really cool to see AI Factory develop into what it is.
That's awesome. And just to give our viewers an idea of scale, obviously NVIDIA is about 40,000 employees, and you guys agree that, our AI usage has skyrocketed, in the last year. Do you have some metrics or numbers that you can share from our own AI factory?
Yeah, it's challenging because, to build and expand your AI factory takes, 6 to 9 months of ordering and planning and getting all the power hooked up, and then meanwhile your inference demand internally, we see a 40% month-over-month growth of how many tokens our internal customers are trying to consume from our AI factory. So you need to plan that in parallel. Now we're at a scale where we're serving 4 trillion tokens a month at 99.9 nearly availability, like 200 million inference requests per day. So that's a really massive adoption that we're doing. And in order to do that, we kind of need to have this hybrid cloud and on-prem strategy so that we can meet kind of what is today's demand with a level of fidelity on the hardware side that we can't necessarily renegotiate every day.
200 million inference requests a day.
That's right.
That's an astounding number.
That's right.
And growing.
It's this guy's fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, we always blame everything on IT.
That's what I'm here for.
Jon, you see obviously a huge demand. I know my team uses AI in our go-to-market team, but across the company, there are different functions: finance, supply chain, marketing. What are some of the use cases that you've seen that the company has used and really benefited with our own AI factory?
Yeah, I think going back to that idea that everybody's a developer now has really unlocked every employee for being able to leverage AI, not just for like simple, chat GPT style question answer type requests, but also workloads where it can actually improve their productivity because they've developed something to automate part of their process or to handle tasks autonomously. One of the things that I like, again, being in IT and in the business of IT, is and we're still rolling this out systematically, but the ability for users, employees, to engage directly with AI to solve problems on their own devices with applications and other IT services. Again, what normally might have been a ticket is now it's a conversation with an agent. And the agents, it's incredible to see how capable these agents have gotten in the past year, 2 years. To the point where we are seeing actual ticket resolution. Again, the metrics are there, but just to realize, like, users are now empowered to not just even traditional IT things, but like, how do I use AI to do this thing? And then it can walk them through, point to other tools within IT, knowledge bases, articles that they can reference if needed, the source materials there. There's like this multiplier effect of being able to solve your own problems that we're seeing from within IT has just been really profound.
Nic, any use cases that interest you, or anything that you've looked at a use case and said, that's awesome?
I mean, the one that's really close to our hearts, that kind of feels like the elephant in the room for NVIDIA, is chip design. These guys have actually been building a system called Chip Nemo for like more than 3 years, agentically, and kind of raise your eyebrows, like, who was building agents 3 years ago? It turns out some guys at NVIDIA were. And it's one of those projects that has that S-curve adoption. We have something like 5,000 hardware engineers at NVIDIA, and almost all of them are using Chip Nemo on a daily basis. So it's an interesting domain because there's a bunch of vocabulary that's, non-public internal vocabulary related to the acronyms in chip design, but then also proprietary file formats that are not going to be compatible with off-the-shelf agents. So in order to achieve all that, they built, was an agentic system. We didn't even have the word agentic harness at the time, but then they redesigned and rebuilt it from scratch. And then the cutting edge shifted again, and they redesigned and re-implemented from scratch. So in a lot of ways, they've influenced the product teams and every other agent builder at NVIDIA with like these best practices. So they really pull us forward.
Got it. Harness. Jon, when you talked about some of the use cases that you use, how do you think about harnesses? How do you think about agents? Obviously, it's different than Gen AI. And how do you think about securing them?
Yeah, it's an evolving space for sure. With NVIDIA's OpenShell and even Nemo Cloud, which can leverage OpenShell, the runtime, so the environment in which you can run these agents autonomously, continues to improve and evolve as well. One of the things I like is that a lot of this is open source, and so development is just constantly improving these different services. You layer them on something like our secure agent workspaces, which are the VM isolation layer of this entire hierarchy. Then you just get more security out of these environments, which is important. Like we see, again, agents are only getting more and more powerful. You look at the frontier models, what they're capable of. Government is starting to get involved and pulling things back and forward. You want to make sure that your environments continue to keep up with the capabilities. And so I really think that agent harnesses and the runtime, those improvements in those areas are going to be more and more important as time goes on.
Got it. And you guys can keep me honest here, right? But when I think about in harness, like essentially it's the brain of the agent, right? And the agent is not that different than the way humans think, right? Like there's the context, which is what do I know, what do I remember, then you observe what's going around you, and then you reason, and then you act on it, and then you're using, just like we humans use, or our employees in a company use, they're using different skills, like whether it's a Slack or Teams, or could be CUDA libraries that we have. And essentially, we also need to make sure that the agents don't go run wild, right? And that's the goal of providing this sandbox with this secure workspace. Is that a fair articulation?
Yeah, I think the way I would articulate that, there's like this perceive, reason, act loop, right?
Yeah.
And perceive is all the context engineering, retrieval, and memory that goes into it. Reasoning is the LLM, wherever you're running your actual token service. And act is all the potential tool calls that you need to make. Now, what we've seen is there's shifts in the security needs of what an AI system needs to do to protect itself, to protect its infrastructure. And the isolation layer that is provided alongside the actual tool calls is really important. So what we did, we had this kind of fall into our laps at Jon's virtual workstation project. We documented what he did. We codified it with our own internal products, and we released the Secure Agent Workspace reference architecture, which you can find online. And from there, it actually documents how to use OpenShell as a component, how to establish a network perimeter around that sandbox environment so that you can have policy and enforcement of that policy around where the agent actually runs.
Got it. And is this the Secure Agent Workspace reference architecture? That's not just a product. It's a architecture, and it's not just for NVIDIA. Anybody can access it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
Okay.
It's published online. Again, things are kind of laid out in almost like in modules, if you think of it that way, and feel free to interpret how you want to utilize that module with tooling that you might already have within your enterprise.
Got it. So what's next for our own AI factory? What are you excited about?
Yeah, for me, I'm in the business of user experience first and foremost, and I'm really fascinated and interested in the user experience around these agentic workflows. I think AI in general, it just advances so fast, and AI capability, there's a ton of momentum behind that. The user experience of those capabilities is an area where I see a lot of opportunity, and my team and I, we focus a lot on what we can do to leverage and harness the most out of these AI powers through a very easy to use, intuitive user experience, particularly for non-developers, or what we like to call knowledge workers. We want.
Are there any non-developers left?
Not many. Depending on how you look at it. Yeah. So it's like there's the way I like to look at it is, what's the friction to get from where you are today to using AI to the fullest based on what that agent can offer you, and whatever is in there is what we're really focused on targeting, to try to just eliminate that friction where it is, and then blur the lines between how agents work and how humans work, to bring that as close together as possible. So it's a fun journey. We've been on it for a while, and I think we'll continue at it for the foreseeable future.
Nic?
I think, if I try to peer ahead how things are going to be different over the next months or the next year, what I see catching on is confidential compute for inference workloads. When you think about it, one of the most impactful elements on agent performance today is which LLM you use. And it's true that, the gap is closing between what is open source, open weights AI versus what is still the best in breed AI that continues to be offered as SaaS in the cloud. But I think those are eventually going to start deploying on-prem. And the reason for that is there's this new technology, NVIDIA confidential compute, that can provide a secure way for a frontier AI lab to deploy on premises, So now you have the benefit of, this multi-billion-dollar IP investment is encrypted in a way that is provably impossible to crack on-prem. And then they get the benefit of being able to deploy inside of the enterprise IT kind of security perimeter, where they know exactly where it's going to run and how, and their IP is protected. But the actual inference payloads going in and out of that service that belong to the enterprise are fully in custody of that enterprise, and they know nobody else can supervise it. So it enables this new sort of zero trust, model where the model weights can be delivered, the enterprise data can be delivered, and whoever's operating that platform doesn't necessarily have the ability to observe either of those things. And that's going to be, I think, a big game changer.
Perfect. Securing your agents, securing your data when it's stored, when it's moving, and when it's in use, super critical. And then, of course, nothing's more important than user experience, right? At the end of the day, it's about the users, it's about the machines, it's about the agents, and they don't care about the assembly line. They just want a finished product out of the factory. By the way, what you said about non-developers being developers, it's a whole different problem. We could have a dedicated episode just on that. But we're running out of time, so let's bring it home here. We've gone from talking about enterprise reference architectures to enterprise validated designs to talking about NVIDIA's own AI factory. The infrastructure is real. The workloads are very real. It's no longer a question if agentic AI is here, agents are here. And so in the next episode, we are going to go deep into agentic AI. We're going to talk about AI factories for long-running agents. How do we think about them? How do we think about the investments? How do we secure them? And ultimately, how do we grow our businesses using agentic AI? So thank you, Nic and Jon. This was awesome. And thank you to all of our viewers. See you next time.